Good morning and welcome to Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson, best-selling author and accomplished public speaker specializing in education and educational leadership. I am your co-host, Jeremy Johnson, organizational psychology consultant specializing in career coaching, training, and development. Meet us here each week to discuss topics in education and leadership and meet with some of the top education talent and thought partners from across the globe. So grab your latte, sit back, and enjoy a relaxed conversation that will leave you informed and encouraged.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are here with a very special guest on Lattes and Leaders. Dr. Rafael Parente is with us from Brazil. Good afternoon, Dr. Parente.
Good afternoon, Brad. It's such an honor and a huge pleasure to be here, to be talking with you and all the people who are also watching and hearing us from all around the world. And, I'm really glad to be able to talk a little bit about my own story and also what's going on here in education and our education development in Brazil.
Absolutely. So let's just jump right into that. Do you want to just share a little bit about your educational story and kind of what you're doing now?
Okay. So Brad, my parents are, my mom is a teacher and my dad works as an economist. So I was very much influenced by them. I actually went to the U.S. when the first time I was 15 years old, and when I came back to Brazil, I started kind of uh, teaching some people to speak and read in English, and but it was a kind of a hobby because it was not a real work, and I was really young. I was 16. But my first when I first went to college, I decided to study economic science, only to drop out some months later because I already worked as an EFL English teacher, English as a foreign language teacher in some courses. So I was working all day long from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And I went on to study at night. But then I went on to study publicity and marketing. And I couldn't go on to study education because my mom, as a teacher, didn't want me to go on to become a teacher or to go on to education because she wanted me to be something, in her words, better. Because parents today, at least in Brazil, they think that their kids cannot go into education because they won't have enough money to pay for their bills, and they have to have better careers, and they have to be more recognized. So, and teachers are not very well recognized here. But anyways, I went on teaching English, and very young, I was 21 when I started my first company. It was a kind of a center of foreign languages and also computer sciences in a network of private schools here in Brasilia. I'm talking from the capital of Brazil, Brasilia, and its objective was to effectively teach kids and teenagers to speak English and Spanish and know how to deal with computers and Word and PowerPoint and Excel by the age of 14. And it was very successful. We actually could create a very interesting center that could actually teach kids how to do that, and they were very interested. And because of that, when I was 20 something, I was kind of I was a very successful English teacher. I think the most successful English teacher in Brasilia. But then, because of some projects, I started participating in social projects, and I kind of got in touch with the most impoverished part of the country, which was never my reality. And here in this city, we kind of live in an island, and the poverty is outside. And when we get in touch with it, we feel kind of shocked. And so when I saw it and I saw how people, were living in very indignified conditions, I decided that I needed to work with education administration and education management, being a leader in education in government, because we needed to change that. And I think the only way for us to decrease inequality in Brazil is to provide excellent educational opportunities for all the children and all the youth in the country. And we are very far from that. But I went on to the US to study. I went for a master's degree at Pace University in leadership, educational leadership, and then for a PhD program at NYU in international education development. And when I came back, I worked first as a researcher in an institute that was an institute created by a private telecommunication company that was interested in financing educational projects. And later I went on for my first experience in the government. I was the undersecretary of education for the city of Rio de Janeiro, and it has a huge educational system. I think it's pretty much the size of New York City's educational system. You know, that are more than 1,500 schools, and it's similar to a state here in Brazil. And Brazil is a huge country like the U.S. So what was very interesting there was that there was money, because Rio. I was there between 2009 and 2014, and we were going to have to hold the Olympic Games in Rio, and we were going to hold the World Cup in Brazil. So there was a lot of money coming into the country and into the city, and we had to make things happen. And so we could do a lot of things, different things in Rio. And I think the two most interesting things was in 2009, way before the pandemic, we created a digital platform with the teachers of Rio to get all the curricular guidelines and create digital lessons that they entered these platforms, and they chose the year and the area, the content, and then they chose the topic. And there was a kind of a it was a kind of a PowerPoint presentation with different videos and quizzes and podcasts and all that related to a topic that they could use with a projector inside the classroom. And of course they could also um, deal with a different way for their own groups. And another thing was that we started creating new kinds of schools. So we went on to redesign models of schools, so that we, for example, implemented a school that didn't have classrooms, and the students were not separated according to their age, but according to their knowledge and skills and competencies. And they were always working in groups, like in projects, and it was a challenge-based learning, and it was very technology intensive, but it was also very social emotional, and they were always dealing with the problems from the community. And the best thing was it was inside the biggest favela in Rio, and it was actually recognized as one of the 100 most influential and innovative schools in the world by Microsoft. And yeah, and so there were some very interesting things. I actually worked in two different governments. I co-founded four different startups, always looking at this. My interest was always, how can we use technological advancements to help improve educational systems and help diminish educational inequalities. um, and I've gone everywhere. So I've been a researcher, I've been a government officer, I've been in the private sector, I've been in the third sector. Right now, I'm the president of Instituto Salto, and our aim is to map, systematize, and scale up best practices innovation in Brazil. And we're also helping to create a very innovative technical school in the south part of Brazil, and also looking a lot at the main question is what kind of professionals do we need with the new era of artificial intelligence? So I think I've spoken a lot. I'm going to take a pause right here and wait for your
Okay,
reaction.
yeah. That was a lot of great information. It's funny when I talk to different leaders from around the world, we kind of have the same issues. No one really wants to go into education anymore.
Yeah.
People
Uh-huh.
tend to dissuade people from it. And so we see a large shortage here in the US. We see not just a shortage of teachers, but even going into the teacher ed programs, we see a tremendous drop off in the number of students that are going into teacher education. So I don't know
Right.
how big of a problem it's going to be, but it seems to be building into a large problem for us here in the US.
Yeah. Well, for here in Brazil, it's huge. It's less than 2% of the students in high schools want to go into the teaching profession, and it's a kind of a problem is we don't think it's easily solved because there's the salary problem, there's it's a cultural problem because the society does not really recognize the importance of teach. It's not like other cultures like the Japanese culture or other countries that really value teachers as professionals. So this is a problem. We know that education is important. Everybody says that education is important, but at the same time, we don't give teachers what they are valued, in terms of money and everything else, and respect and all that. And that's a huge issue.
And I think that's one we see. Like you said, there are a few countries I think that do a pretty good job with it. I know even here in the US, as large as we are and the money that we have, we don't do a very good job, like you said, of supporting teachers, of respecting them for the place that they hold, the importance that they hold in society. We all
Yeah.
know it's important, like you said, but it doesn't seem like we do
Yeah.
a good job of supporting them and paying them
it's
enough
it's much
even.
better than it's much better than here in Brazil, but I think you could still do much better.
Yeah. So, I think that's wonderful that you saw these problems and even kind of went out on your own as kind of an entrepreneur almost to work in these areas. But when you
Right.
got into your role, like as the Secretary of Education in Rio, were you able to do a lot? Like, were there changes you were able to make? Did you run into a lot of walls trying to make changes? Do you feel like you had that flexibility?
Yeah. um I think there were some things that were very that were kind of shocking to me. Some things related to the system itself, and other things related to the reality in Rio. Uh, One thing that I think it happens here in Brazil more than in other places, but it's also true in many places that we say that good schools do a good job in spite of all the red tape and all the bureaucracy and all the system conditions, all the things that they have to do because they are obliged to do, and all the different things that they I mean, there's huge stupid bureaucracy that hinders the good work of schools, and they try to do a good job, and sometimes we try to make things happen, but it's like we go to the public service here, and it's like people say, no, you can't do that, and I used to go like, but why can't we do that? No, because we do it another way. But why do we do it another way? Because it's always been done that way. But why, well, because it's like that, so it's like people, they are like that, and they feel like they have a power in their hands, and they don't want to let go, and they know how to use that in the way that it is arranged, and they don't want to mess things. They want They don't want to make things different from what they are today because they are afraid of losing their power.
Mm.
And and it happens in all the bureaucracy. So you have these little
Yeah.
fields, these little places with their people and with their responsibilities and with their powers. And I actually tried to go on and creating relationships with people. And this took a lot of time for me because, well, first you have to build rapport, and then you have to kind of, with building confidence, you have to explain to people that it's going to be much better if they change and if they do it differently, if they move from the way that they have always done, and they try to do differently, and they look for different ways. And and so it takes a long time because it's a matter of changing cultures. When we
Mm.
say like innovating schools and innovating in education, it's not like changing just habits or changing just routines. It's changing much more than that. It's changing the way that people think, the way that people behave, and the way that the culture happens in schools and in institutions. So changing cultures is something extremely complex, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy from leaders. So the amount of red tape and the amount of the amount of time and energy that it took me to make things change, it was really shocking for me. This was something that and there were a lot of people who wanted to make things change, but they were, many people told me like, no, I came here and I had all this energy, but I was pushed to become uh like to not move, to
Right.
become kind of conformed, to conform in this place, and to not want to innovate. um so that's what happens to people. And the other thing was, I was very shocked by violence, because even
Mm.
for Brazilian standards, there are some places in Rio that are they are very tough to for you to understand and kind of accept that a reality such as that exists, because it's not like the places are governed by the formal government. There is a parallel government happening in those places. And if you want to go there, if I wanted to go there as a governmental leader, I had to call. It was not, well, we kind of we we pretended it was the parent teacher association, but it was not. We were talking to the drug dealers who were,
Mm.
or the militia who were kind of controlling that place, for them to know that we were going to visit the schools. And sometimes on the way to the school, we had to um, put our car windows down, because there were some boy soldiers along the way with their big guns, and they had to see us, and we had to tell them, "Hey, I know you're the student from that school, and I'm going to visit your school because I'm going to talk to the teachers about this and this and that." So
Wow. Wow.
yeah, it's a reality that it's really heartbreaking, because you see that there are many kids who are just denied the possibility of having, childhood, and of a life without violence, and they just
Mm.
go on to become soldiers when they're like 11 or 12 years old.
Mm.
And that's not something that is changing. The these groups that control the drug system, and the militia groups, they are very powerful. They are still very powerful. It's not like the government is becoming more intelligent and becoming more organized and is making them feel weaker. It's not happening, and that's something that is really frightening. But so these were two things that I think. And one thing that I think was very nice and pleasant was to understand that people, because many people say, no, public servants are very laid back and relaxed and they don't want to work a lot. They are lazy but it's not the case. People are really willing to do some good job and some good work, and they want to do something that matters. They want to participate and to do and to be able to make a difference. So everybody wants to make a difference. There's not one single person. I don't believe, I've always said that I don't believe there's one single person that wants to wake up in the morning and say, I prefer to not work or to just be lazy than doing a great job or participating in something great. I think that I just can't conceive someone that wouldn't be interested in participating in great projects and great endeavors. So I think it's just a matter of how you are able to invite people in and to make them feel heard and participant.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'm like you. I often say that I don't think like teachers go to school to be a bad teacher. I don't think students go to school to be a bad student.
Right.
Like you said, they just need opportunity. They need to, have those chances, those opportunities to do something, to be successful. Now, you had kind of a different track coming because your first intention wasn't education. So, coming from a little different background, do you think that helped you because you've been able to do a lot of different things there? How do you think that prepared you, like from a leadership standpoint? What traits do you see that you brought that maybe were different from leadership traits you see in traditional educationally trained leaders in those roles?
Right. Um, well, for me, it was funny because I first started studying economics, and then I grad my major in college was publicity and marketing. So I studied communication, and then I went on to study education, and I could understand how, for example, the principals in New York City schools were trained. And I actually worked as an assistant principal at Pace High School, and I also worked at different, as a teaching assistant at NYU, and was the co-director of an institute called the Multinational Institute for American Studies at NYU, but I could understand how in this institute, for example, we brought leaders from around the world, and also later on in Rio, Claudia was the Secretary of Education, and Claudia and I were invited to create a chapter of GELP. GELP was Global Education Leaders Program, created by something called the Innovation Unit, and it was a network of educational leaders from around the world. And these guys would meet up in different cities around the world to exchange ideas on how to redesign their schools and their systems. Um, they and we were invited to be part of that and also to design the Brazilian chapter of that. So it was interesting for me uh, to be part of this network and to meet educational leaders from around the world and to um, also create a network of leaders in education in Brazil. But of course, I also had to deal with leaders in other sectors. And also, for example, when I co founded startups and I had to go and ask for money and find the funding for different startups or different institutes, and you have to talk to the business people, you have to talk to different funds. um, I think it's always a challenge for you to find the language that these people speak, because we from education we have a kind of a language, and then you go on into
That's
the
true.
business
That's
area,
true.
and you know that there's, if you go to Wall Street or to Faria Lima, that is the name of the street in São Paulo, that is our Wall Street here in Brazil. There is a kind of a language that these guys speak. So we kind of speak a language in education. These guys speak another kind of language. But also, it's also true that in government there are some terms. In the academic world there are some other terms. If you go on into the third sector, there are. So I think the most important thing is for you to understand that you have to edit the language. You have to edit your strategies,
Mm,
especially your communication strategies. You have to think of the public, the person that you're talking to, and what kind of way, because you're not going to be able to convey your message unless you talk in a way that is going to sound familiar to the person.
mm. You know, I
So,
really like that. And I don't think
uh-huh,
anybody's ever shared that before because
uh-huh.
I like to ask about, interacting with the community and how you build community and stuff. But I love this point that you're making about being aware of how they speak and the terminology and how to really think about your communication to them. That's a powerful thing to really think about, especially for educators that really may not know how to speak their language that well to communicate and to get what you need or to, build those relationships. So I think that's very important.
Yeah, Brad. And if you come to think of it, we're we're always trying to convince people of something. We're always trying to get our point across, and to um, have our voice heard, and to um, you know kind of sell our idea or our argument or our project or our something that we want to, our dream. If I have a dream, I want my dream to happen. If I want my project to happen, I want my school to be successful. So there are some things that I need to see happening so that my school is successful, right? And for these things to happen, I need to convince people. You're always trying to convince people, and you're not going to convince people unless you really think about your communication strategies. And I think people always underestimate this part.
Mm,
We should always be studying communication strategies and how to edit this language and how we approach different people in different ways.
mm. Great
And
point.
also in education, if for example you're going to scale a project, or you're going to scale an innovation. For example, this platform that I told you that we created with the teachers, and we had the challenge of implementing it in the whole network of 1,500 schools. Um, we we asked the teachers from each school to, we had a champion in each of the schools that would be able to go there and defend the idea and defend the use of the platform and so on and so forth. But we needed to understand that we were dealing with different publics. So we were talking from, I had to convince the Secretary of Education, Claudia, and then the people in the bureaucracy, and I had to convince the teachers, and I had to convince the principals from the schools, and I had to convince the teachers in the schools, and also the students to use, and also talk to the families, and also talk to the other workers in the classroom. So there are tons of different people that speak different languages, and that we need to be able to reach them and understand what it is that is important to them,
Mm.
because they have different interests,
Right.
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's something that for me studying communication, it was nice because I always thought about that, how I needed to be able to convey a message effectively to different audiences.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, that's very powerful. Well, let's shift a little bit now and let me ask you this. Thinking back over your educational career, is there a teacher or two that really influenced you or had influence, impact on you, either as a
Yeah.
leader or as a teacher?
Oh yeah, definitely. There were a lot actually. And as I said, my mom herself was a teacher. My dad also worked a little bit as a teacher. But there's a guy I even have his picture. We have some very well known figures here in Brazil. Paulo Freire, for example, is a
Hmm.
very
I've
well
read his
known.
work. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but there is another one that people. He's not very well known outside Brazil, but his name is Antonio Carlos, like Anthony Charles, and he was one of the leaders in the creation of an a kind of a law that protected children and youth in Brazil.
Hmm.
But he also created some very innovative and groundbreaking pedagogy that laid the foundation for huge institutes and foundations. And this is important because many of the things that are happening today in Brazil are happening because of the money and the investments of these big institutes and foundations. So, for example, I know that you guys have a lot of big institutes and foundations in the US as well, but here we have the Lehman Foundation and we have the institutes Natura, that is a private company, but also of banks and other companies, and they go on to invest in education. And what they do is they create coalitions and look at specific problems. So there is a coalition that looks at illiteracy, for example, and they decide to uh, create pilot programs in different states in order to try to come up with solutions. And then when they look at what is the or what are the most successful um, policies or practices, then they start scaling these things up. So there are some very interesting things that are happening now because of these institutes and foundations. And at the very beginning, these teacher, Antonio Carlos, he laid all the foundations and all the knowledge and all the theoretical pedagogy that everyone is following today. There are some things that everyone is talking about here in Brazil today. One, for example, is how students need to be able to build their life project from when they are 11 or 12 years old. They need to be able to start thinking about their lives and their dreams and what how they're going to go about building on their accomplish their dreams. What is the step by step that is going to take them there? Another thing is youth protagonism. So I think there is another word that it's not autonomy, but there is another word in English that I forgot now, but it's like having students have a voice, right? Having students also being able to participate in schools' decision and even in their assessment and what happens and how the schools are going to be transformed. And so this is also something important that uh, is really being discussed in Brazil these days.
Yeah, a
So
student
this was one
agency, I
teacher.
think.
Yeah, and and there was another teacher called Olga that was a science teacher, and she was very special to me because she taught science in such a way that she was very passionate about it, and she made I think she made at least half of her students fall in love with science because of the way that they she talked and she showed us with it was not only theory, there was always
Right.
something practical in her lessons, and I think this is very powerful as well.
That's awesome. Yeah. One of the teachers that really influenced me was a science teacher as well. So I can relate to what you're talking about there. That's awesome. We talk a lot about like leadership characteristics and traits and stuff. And we talked a little bit about it earlier. But if you had like a nugget of wisdom or something to share with new leaders or people coming up that want to move into leadership, what what would be like the piece of advice or something that you would share with them?
Right. um I think the most important thing is that they always need to have a very clear vision, a strategy, and also a narrative for themselves and for their project, for what they're going to do. So it's because I feel like a very common problem with leaders is that they're not very clear in regards to what they want to accomplish, or how is it that they're going to be able to do that, or why is it that they want people to do that, you know.
Mm,
And I think these are the three most important questions that they need to answer right away, and they need to make their point very clearly, very simply, and very concisely, you know, at the very moment that they see people and they say, no, look, we have this problem here and we need to solve it. We're going to solve it by getting to that place. So we're here, we're getting there, and we have a step by step that is this, and this. And this way we're going to be able to solve it. And I don't see this clarity. I feel there
mm,
are many very passionate leaders, but I feel that there's a lack of clarity in terms of
mm.
vision and strategy and also narrative.
Oh, I like
So
that. And that's so true. Yeah. If you think about, because we talk about, you know, in schools, we have a mission statement on the wall or we have a vision. But like you said, how do you get there? And are you articulating a way to, as a leader, to help people get on board and to buy into that vision or whatever it is? And then how do we get there? And it
right,
goes back to what you said in the very beginning about the importance of communication.
right, yeah, and you know, it if it's on the walls but it's not in people's minds and hearts and practices in their day-to-day practice, it doesn't really matter if it's in every wall of the classroom. But you know, sometimes it's not in the walls, but it's in people's hearts, and it makes a whole lot of difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've enjoyed having you on today. You've given us a lot to think about and just a great perspective, I think, on education. And really, the big thing that I take away is just the importance, like you said, of the narrative. And especially when we think about, we always talk about the importance of building community and interacting with the community. But like you said, we have to make sure that we're speaking a language that they understand to
Right.
build that community with them. And I
Mhm.
think that's a powerful thing and something that, especially a lot of leaders, need to think and reflect on and ask themselves, am I doing that well? Because that really
And we
will
need a
make the
clear
difference.
message, right, Brett? We need a clear message. We need to create with them a clear vision, and we need good strategies. We need to be able to convince.
Absolutely. Well, I have one more question for you before we go. So this is called
Yeah.
Lattes and Leaders. So what is your favorite hot beverage? Is it coffee, espresso latte, or none of the above?
Yeah, I actually had it this morning, and I love the white chocolate, hot white chocolate.
Or so you're not
So
much of a coffee drinker?
I like coffee. I do like coffee, but I have a problem with migraine. So if I drink a lot
Mm,
of coffee, I have migraines.
gotcha. I gotcha. Well, the white chocolate sounds good too, especially
Yeah,
as fall and winter approaches here. I know
yeah.
it's a little different there, but well, I appreciate you being on today and sharing so much. It sounds like you have really done some great things down there in
Thank you,
Brazil
Fred.
and in Rio. So we appreciate you taking the time to come on and share your message. And there's so many good takeaways from it that I think will really help leaders in different areas to hopefully refocus and learn to communicate in a way, like you said, that'll really impact everyone. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. It was a huge pleasure to be here and be talking to you. And I'm always, it is always going to be a pleasure to be back and to talk some more. So count me in.
All right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
This has been Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson. We hope that you leave today feeling informed and inspired. For more educational content, be sure to add this podcast to your list and follow Dr. Johnson on any and all social media platforms. For more information on Dr. Johnson, Jeremy Johnson, and special guests, check out drbradjohnson.com. That is DOCTOR, bradjohnson.com. Hope to have you back soon.